Inflammation isn't all bad. Inflammation is actually a natural state of defense.
Mhm.
So it's something that actually protects us. But when we're overinflamed, that's when we start to have really serious complex illness that develops. When you get hit by something, say, you got hit by a baseball or something like that, right away, you're going to have some swelling, some tenderness. It'll get red, it'll get warm. It becomes swollen, and that that in itself is inflammation, right? That is your body's way of bringing attention to that area. So whatever kind of fighter cells we have, whatever healing modalities we have within our systems, which are constantly floating around, they have to swarm to an area to actually do their job. And so our body uses inflammation to make that happen. And our immune system is the thing that guides that. One of the things people ask about is like, well, if inflammation is the problem, why isn't it ever in a diagnosis? But
Mhm.
often it actually is, but we just don't know the language. If we think about the words arthritis, colitis, dermatitis, what's the commonality there? The itis, right?
Yeah.
Itis is actually inflammation. Colitis means inflammation of the colon. Dermatitis is inflammation of the skin. Arthritis is inflammation of the joints. When we're, getting all these diagnoses, people are like, well, I just want to know what this is. What am I dealing with here? My practice is a little different from other functional medicine doctors because I don't actually do any lab work and I don't diagnose people in my practice. And the reason is I I actually believe that the root of everything, if you actually break it down, is inflammation. It's just an overgrown inflammatory source. And so, regardless of what you've had labeled, and sometimes labels can be actually quite comforting to know that you have something. And so you know
Yeah.
where to go next. But when you know that everything is related to an inflammatory state, you realize, well, it doesn't matter what the label is. My body's showing me that this area has too much inflammation. For example, if you have arthritis, your joints are saying, hey, Aliya, you need to take care of something because I'm showing you that there's something that's not right. Pain, often, because it's become such a bad thing, we
Mhm.
associate pain as something really terrible. And yes, it can be painful, but there's also a very important piece to recognize is that pain is just a signal. And it's
Mhm.
how we interpret that signal that makes the difference. If those shoulders never feel relief unless you take some kind of medication to numb that pain, all we're doing is literally that we're blocking the signal. We're not really, helping that area heal at all. Let's talk a little bit about the immune system, because the immune system and inflammation kind of work hand in hand. Inflammation, like I explained, is your body's response to defend itself.
Mhm.
And when that defense happens, it can cause a pain signal, which is what tells us that something's wrong. And it may not
Mhm.
be pain. If it's in your gut, it might be diarrhea, it might be nausea, it may be cramping, it may be some other kind of symptom, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a signal to let you know that something's not right. When you ask about, how do I know I have inflammation? Well, if you have a skin condition, if you have eczema, if you have psoriasis, if you have acne, those are inflammatory signs that your body's giving you. If you have joint pain, if you have bloating, if you have brain fog,
Mhm.
all of these things are signs that your body is dealing with too much. When we look at how do we actually identify what we need to work on, I like to think about the immune system, because the immune system is what guides that inflammatory process to happen. So the immune system's like this overriding leader in the body that will give guidance to the inflammatory markers to go here and there to do their job. So when we look at the immune system, it's a really big word, right? Because it's like it's this invisible system that exists and we rely on it for so many things. Now, the way that I practice a lot is analogies. I like stories and analogies because I think it makes things a little bit easier to understand. So when I think of the immune system, I consider it as a plate of food for a little kid. So you've got this little kid, which is the immune system here in this case, and it's sitting in front of this plate of food. And over our lifetime, we've put things on this plate of food. It might have been a really traumatic birth. It might have been, having a car accident. It might have been antibiotics while growing up with lots of sinus infections. It might have been emotional trauma. It might have been a divorce. It might have been a death in the family. All of those things end up piling up onto this plate of this for this kid. And this kid's looking at this plate of food thinking, how am I going to eat all of this? And so it starts munching a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here, but it never actually gets to finish anything that's on the plate because life is not static, right? We are also putting on the plate what we are exposing ourselves to on a daily basis. And that might be, radiation. It might be toxins in the environment, like pollutants. It might be things that we're eating, or it might be new medications that we're taking. And all of those things are piling up on this plate for this little kid. And this little kid's like, I just can't eat all of this. So it just tries to work as hard as it possibly can to finish what's on this plate. Now, imagine a virus comes around, right, and tries to land on this plate. And the kid's like, oh no, I have no time for this. So it's going to push that off the plate. So we're creating this mess, right, around the system. Instead of that virus causing you symptoms that might have lasted like 3 or 4 days, you're dealing with it for 3 to 4 weeks because your
Mhm.
immune system, this little kid, does not have the capacity to actually eat it, right? So it never has the ability to actually finish that piece of food that we're considering on its plate. And so the same thing goes with everything else. Oh, I've had the psoriasis for 10 years and it gets better, but then it gets worse and it gets better and it gets worse. And we wonder why. Well, there's
Mhm.
so much on this kid's plate. It's never able to finish it. Sometimes when you take a vacation, and what I mean by vacation is maybe going sugar free, right? Or getting rid of some of the inflammatory foods, that gives your immune system less to worry about. And so now it says, okay, I can handle a little bit more of dealing with the psoriasis. And so it helps, minimize that to a point where it's like, oh, I'm not having that many outbreaks. But you'll notice as soon as you put more on the plate, it might come back. When I think of the immune system, that's how I envision it. And it helps because what I usually recommend from there is consider what's on your plate. So if you're having joint pain, or if you're having skin conditions, or if you're having GI issues, or whatever it is that you're dealing with, consider what has been put on your plate. So, what are the things that are there constantly? And sometimes the easiest way to go about it is actually look at your life right now and what kind of habits you have on a day to day basis. What kind of patterns cause us to be addicted to sugar? What kind of patterns keep us in a certain lifestyle? And so, when you start looking at what's there, once you see it, you have the ability to remove it and you have the ability to do something about it. So, it becomes simple when you consider what you're putting on your plate. The top 5 things I usually recommend for people to remove is sugar, alcohol, gluten, dairy, and soy. Those are 5 easy things to take out that actually allow your immune system to have something less to handle, because food is something we're doing at least 3 times a day for most people. And so that's something that you can easily give your immune system a vacation from.